This is a new beginning. A fresh look at the world and yourself. Rather than waging at the world you see, it is more important to look at yourself and to see how you are meeting the challenges that the world presents. This new beginning study course is at once commercial, political, secular, social, and spiritual. This is a practicum, not just theory and talk. It's a laboratory of ideas that you can test in the world around you today. Along the way, you will discover a wealth of ideas that has always been yours, but that you didn't know existed. You didn't know, so you had no right to this wealth. Even if you did know it exists, but do not know how to work it, you have no legitimate right to this knowledge and wealth. This new beginning study course is a tool you can use to bridge the rivers of deception, illusion, ignorance, and apathy that you might face. This course will aid in opening your eyes, your mind, and your heart to the marvelous gift of being you. The purpose of these lessons is to provide information to those who care enough about the things we face today and will do something about it. This information will help you see the difference between fiction and fact, the facts of what actually is. These lessons are designed to help you realize that you are a free being with unlimited potential who can create your own world and be responsible for the things that occur in your life. This is who you really are. But to the extent that you think you're not responsible for the things that occur in your life, to that degree, you are enslaved by your own thoughts. Here's a quote that applies to you. This is Morpheus. He's talking to Neo for the first time in the movie The Matrix. Morpheus. I imagine right now you feel a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees and is expecting to wake up. You're here because you know something that you can't explain, but you feel it, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind. It is the feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? Neo, the Matrix. Do you know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television set. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world of Oz that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you to the truth, that you are a slave. Like everyone else, you're born into a prison that you cannot see, that you cannot smell, nor taste, nor touch. It is a prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can tell you what the Matrix is. You just have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill, the story ends. You will wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. Take the red pill, and you will stay in Wonderland. And I will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all that I can offer you is the truth, nothing more. We do in actuality live in such a world, and for anyone who has been involved in the system to any degree in court, or with county, city, or national rules and regulations, or a bankruptcy, or a foreclosure, you know something is very wrong. You look all about you and you see the morals of this country slipping into depravity. Many people are in despair, nothing seems real anymore, and we can't put our finger on the cause. Something is wrong in our world, it bothers us, like a splinter in the mind. This book, as with The Matrix itself, will be a life-altering experience for you. You will come to see that we are commercial slaves. This book will show you how we became slaves and how we can free ourselves from this slavery. This will affect everything you think and say and do. This will expose the beast and show you the promised land. The world around you has been designed to distract you from the truth. Throughout your entire life, others have taught you the meaning of words, with words. But did you ever take the time to learn the meanings of these words yourself? This world is filled with symbols whose meanings you do not know and do not understand. Words taught to you verbally by someone else. Your life is filled with meanings that quite simply are not true. It's a wonder that we can communicate with one another. Are you in commerce? One of the main words we wish to define is commerce and its various derivatives. Why? Because we live in a sea of commerce and are controlled by maritime law. We have lived so since our freshly life began here. Even lawyers, the courts, and law enforcement officers of this nation seem to be blind to the fact that we are controlled by and live in a sea of commerce, or they are trying to deceive us concerning this truth. Each time anyone brings up commerce in the courts, the attorneys and the judges exclaim, "We're not in commerce here. Commerce has nothing to do with this court. We're under statutory law." They appear to be so sincere, so positive. It makes you wonder if they really are ignorant of this fact, or if they are intentionally deceiving us as good actors. Whatever the reason, they deny that we are under the jurisdiction of commerce, when we are immersed in commerce. Therefore, we must have an understanding of what this means and how it affects us, regardless of the ignorance or the deceit of the courts of laws. What is commerce? Commerce is an interchange of goods or commodities, an engagement, sexual intercourse, intellectual or spiritual interchange, communion, merchandise, goods, or trade. It is to exchange goods, productions, or property of any kind, the buying, selling, and exchanging of articles. Intercourse by way of trade and traffic between different peoples or states and the citizens or inhabitants thereof, including not only the purchase, sale, and exchange of commodities, but also the instrumentalities and agencies of which it is promoted, and the means and applications by which it is carried on, and the transportation of persons as well as goods, both by land and sea. The term commerce means trade, traffic, commerce, transportation, or communication among the several states. Commerce is independent upon two related words, value and scarcity, or it's dependent rather. Without these two aspects, commerce falls flat and is unable to function. Create scarcity of anything and its value tends to soar. Decrease that scarcity by increasing the supply, and you decrease the value. This is how the power elite control our actions today, by controlling scarcity and value in commerce. Scarcity by controlling supply, value by controlling demand. When money is scarce, we fear that we do not have enough money. However, it is the lack of money that we fear, therefore worshiping or giving value to and value of the God of fear. The derivation of the word worship is to create worth. What part of your life is not affected by commerce? The entire program. The program consists of 8 study issues. Each issue illustrates a single state of your being, where and how and who you are. You and everyone else are in some state of being. There are specific procedures of advancing out of your present state into the next and higher state of being. These procedures are part of every activity, and they must be compiled with whether you know or understand them or not, or complied with rather. Following these procedures will take the chance out of everything you do, whether in business, personal finance, or in your individual life. The variables are only how well you perceive the situation and how much energy you apply to its practice. The proper application of the procedures work no matter how they are applied, so long as the right procedure is applied in the sequence of steps taken. Knowing the steps carries the responsibility of using them, or chance or fate prevails. What you see counts. Chapter 2. Explorers were en route to the New World, sailing around the tip of Africa in massive ships driven by large canvas sails. They anchored their ships a safe distance offshore and used open longboats to row a small crew ashore. Never having seen white men nor their ships before, the natives asked the men how they arrived in that part of the world. The sailors pointed to the ships anchored offshore with the large white sails. The natives looked in that direction, and no matter how hard the natives tried, they could not see the ships apart from the clouds. The shaman of the tribe began to try something new, and looking at things differently, the image of the ships began to appear in his view. As he began to see things this way, others began to see the ships too. Within a brief period of time, everyone in the tribe could see the ships, even those who were not there to meet the crew as they rowed ashore. The tribe had learned a new way to see, or perceive the world, and in doing so, extended the boundaries of their world. Elisha prayed and said, "Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he, his servant, may see." And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire around Elisha. 2 Kings 6:17. It becomes increasingly important now, more than ever, that your beliefs be not limited by what you have been taught. You are learning to trust yourself, your own feelings, and the process of your own life. In this world, you have chances, choices, and free will. You have the opportunity to realize your full potential as a divine expression of the Creator, to become a creator yourself by being aware of the power of righteous thought. Thoughts are things, not just pictures in your mind or sensations in your bodies. As you think, you create. Is there ever a time you're not thinking? You are forever creating your experience with your thoughts. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. You do not have to know the intricacies of the mind, only the ability to use them as they are designed. You can just be in the purity of good intent. This is the beauty of life. You may choose to know more if you wish, or just be in your experience, and the outcome will remain the same. The ability to create as a child of God is a skill available to everyone, the result of 3 components of thought. Number 1, the clarity of your thought. For thoughts to become manifest, they must be clear, concise, and sustained. Constantly changing, wavering thoughts are incapable of sustaining a good result. They may appear as a series of incongruent, confusing situations, mirroring the blueprints of your mind. A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. James 1:8. Duration of thought. While clarity is the key component, unless it is sustained, the seed is not nurtured long enough to develop in the soil. Persistence alone wins the prize. Watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. Ephesians 6:18. Intention of thought. Intention is the energy of thought that sustains the seed in the matrix of creation. The seed may dissolve at any point if the energy of intent is cast aside and lost. Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds, for riches are not forever. Proverbs 27:23 and 24. Meditation and prayer. Meditate is akin to medicus, to heal, to cure, to care, to dwell on anything in thought, to turn over or resolve in creative mind, to plan, to intend, to think on, close, or continued thought. Prayer, contemplation, an utterance, to ponder, to converse with oneself or with God, to bind, to tie, to wind. Notice the similarity in the 2 words, both concerning thought. Both describe the action of turning over or winding up thoughts in your mind. To look at a thought from every angle by turning it over in your mind so that you can see it from different points of view until you understand. The difference between prayer and meditation is that meditation offers a silent space in which to hear the higher power ever talking to you. In prayer, you are speaking to God, and in meditation, you are listening to the still small voice of the Holy Spirit. In either circumstance, you are seeking intervention from a higher power into a situation over which you feel powerless. Traditionally, we have not been taught to see ourselves as we've been taught only to see ourselves as the created, not the creators of what we create. We feel separated from all else, and in that separation, we cannot see or identify with the power that creates, feeling helpless to address the events that unfold in our lives. Things seem to just happen by chance. A fundamental concept shared in the traditions of indigenous people is the idea that the human form is a part of creation, not separate on its own. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord, open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you, I want to see you. It's from a worship song. As an integral part of creation, the individual plays an important role in the cause of events within his world. These ancient concepts are just as valid today as they were thousands of years ago. You are and have always been part of all that you see. You have the opportunity to plant and nurture your creation according to the thought patterns of your mind. You become the creator of your experience and impact the events of the world. You intervene on your own behalf through the oneness with God, utilizing prayer, directed thought, or meditation. To be or not to be? That is the question. The way ancient native peoples such as the Australian Aborigines, the American Indians, manifested their thoughts was by being that which they sought. For example, if they wanted water or rain, they would pray rain, not pray for rain. They would become the rain in thought. They would taste the rain, feel the rain, smell the rain, hear rain, see the rain. to the point that they themselves would become the rain itself. All senses activated in the mind create a vacuum, if you will, so that the intended substance can manifest itself. Whosoever shall say to a mountain, Be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Mark 11:23. A universal principle states that the physical universe cannot sustain a vacuum, and you will fill a seeming vacuum to balance itself. This is how you utilize the universal principles to your advantage. The experience of each individual affects the whole to a great degree. It is not enough to pray, for example, for peace in the world. Praying for peace in the world may be well-intentioned, but the request for peace in and of peace itself is incomplete. The highest form of intervention that anyone can offer in a given situation is not to ask for something, but rather to see that which is desired. If peace is the desired reality, peace must become the reality of your experience. You must see and become that peace. But it takes a few reference points within the whole to change the expression of the whole. As it is written, I have made thee a father of many nations, Abraham, who calleth those things that be not as they were. Romans 4:17. This is the lesson of native Africans and the explorers mentioned at the beginning of this book. Remember that you experience everything as a part of the whole of your journey home and your return. Don't be penalized for failing to make the return. Each circumstance that you attract into your experience is the result of energy you expend to bring healing or light or lack of limitation or want and woe. Try to become aware of anger, pain, and frustration from this point of view. Each is an expression of fear. Take advantage of the opportunities as they cross your path. You are more powerful than any fear that you might enter. Fear is only a small fragment of your world. Do not conform to duality, ego, or fear. You are an expression of God's love. You are a child of God. The history. Chronological events. 450 to 1748. Commerce is a common thread woven throughout our entire history. The merchant, the money changer, and the law of the merchant are all parts of the laws of commerce or civil and maritime law. This is not to say that commerce is bad. However, commerce brings with it the laws of commerce. Laws that, if not properly understood, can bind you into slavery. This all happens because we agree. Banks create money out of thin air. They call it credit, and charge the people a profit called interest on the fiat money that they create. Merchants who produce nothing at all sell what other people produce at a larger profit than the producer himself receives. This again happens only because we agree. Merchants and bankers create laws through lawmakers that they control, who protect commerce and bind the people to obey the laws of commerce. This happens again only because we agree. This happens because we trust other people to handle our own affairs. This happens and has been happening throughout history. There is great value at looking at the past. The patterns of the past help to solve the puzzles of today, so we can better understand what's happening in our domain. A man with a knowledge of history may be said to have lived from the beginning of the world, continually adding to his knowledge in every way. David Hume, London, of the Study of History, page 390 in 1898. A chronology of the development of law. In 450, the People's Law, the Anglo-Saxons develop and extend the law of the people. 1066, Ruler's Law. The people's freedom and natural rights are lost when England is conquered by the Normans from Normandy, France, and they become subject to the law of the ruling keys. (1215) The Magna Carta. The great struggle to restore freedom begins when King John is forced to sign the Magna Carta that guarantees unalienable rights to the people. The king must obey the Magna Carta as law. 1265. Parliamentary power. The principle no taxation without representation extends the powers of Parliament. All laws now require Parliament's consent, including the ability to impeach the offices of the king. (1721) Parliamentary Law. A prime minister is chosen to rule the parliament, who chooses a cabinet and appoints the administrative officials with the king's consent. Thus, the British establish a republic structured on parliamentary law. 1776, Confederate Law. The Articles of Confederation are adopted to provide for individual state law, with a committee of the states functioning as a national Congress. 1787, Constitutional Law. The American founders established a new kind of republic, a system structured on constitutional law. The American colonies gained independence by force of arms and asserted their rights before the world of the Declaration of Independence prior to the Revolutionary War. The Articles of Confederation in 1777 were ratified 4 years later in 1781 and were soon replaced by a totally new system of people's law under the Constitution for the United States in 1787. Chronology, timeline of world events. 4000 BC. Genesis was translated from Sumerian scripts unearthed only decades ago and recently discovered Nineveh and other areas of the Tigris-Euphrates area of the Middle East. These ancient scripts on baked clay tablets date back to the civilization that was highly educated, incredibly organized, and socially advanced. In 2123 BC, Abraham, grandfather of the Israelites, came from the ancient city of Nippur and later moved to Ur, both major cities of Sumer. Abraham was led by God to Haran and finally to Canaan, where this promised land was to be inherited by his offspring, the children of Israel. (2023 BC). Abraham's son Isaac is born. Genesis 21:5. 2000 BC. Babylon flourishes in the land of Sumer, Shinar. Babylon had canals to irrigate the land, indoor toilets, a city sewage system, public restrooms and baths, and a city-to-city postal system with baked clay letters and envelopes. Babylon has a judicial system where judges wore black robes just as they do today. Then they began to fall into disgrace, but continued to rule through fiction until they were destroyed. They had a system of commerce that included coined money in banks, receipts, titles, seals, and signatures. Merchant law evolved into Roman law, then into civil law, later becoming maritime law of today. 1963 BC. Jacob is born to become Israel. Genesis 25 and 26. 1890 BC. Jacob's son Joseph is sold into Egyptian slavery. Genesis 37:2. 1833 BC. The Israelites flee into Egypt because they are in famine. Genesis 15:13, 47:8. 1513 BC. The Israelites are enslaved in Egypt and Moses is born. 1433. The Exodus. Moses leads the Israelites out of Egypt through the Red Sea into the wilderness. 1432 BC. God gives Moses the 10 Commandments for the Israelites. Exodus 20. 1393 BC. The Israelites reach the Promised Land and Moses dies. 1034 BC. Solomon begins building a temple at Jerusalem. 1 Kings 6:1. 607 BC. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, captures the Israelites and takes them to Babylon in Sumer, now called Iraq. 593 BC. The Medo-Persian. Cyrus the Great conquers Babylon and allows some of the Israelites to go back to their homeland and rebuild the temple of Nebuchadnezzar that had been destroyed. Or Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed it. 537 BC. The Assyrians hire counselors or attorneys to frustrate the Israelites in building the temple, weakening their hands. Ezra 4:5. And they hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose. Ezra 4:5. 525 BC. Alexander the Great captures Babylon from the Medes and releases the remnant of Israel back to their original homeland. 400 BC. The Hebrew language disappears as a useful language, and the Israelites become scattered by repeated captures and enslavements by Assyria. Hence the lost tribes of Israel. Many believe the remnants of Israelites tribes wandered to northern Europe and carried the biblical laws with them. Many think that America and Great Britain constitute the regathering of the lost tribes of Israel, Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's sons. 361 BC, Julian the Apostate, or Julius Flavius, begins his reign as Emperor of Rome and seizes Babylon from Assyria, adopting Babylonian law, civil and maritime, to Roman law. 363 BC, Julian the Apostate reduces taxes by reducing court expenditures and eliminating corruption. He is killed in battle with the Persians. 200 BC, two Roman emperors are assassinated for passing laws against usury. 133 BC, Babylonian priests turn over the priesthood to the Roman priests in Pergamos, in Middle East Turkey, the future site of the 7 churches of Revelation, where Pergamos is referred to as Satan's seat or throne. Babylon is destroyed, but the Babylonian system remains, even to this day. 44 BC, Brutus assassinates Emperor Julius Caesar for minting coins to make money plentiful by opposing the money changers, or the merchants' banks. 31 BC, Jesus Christ of Nazareth chases the money changers, the merchant banks, out of the temple, and 3 days later is charged with blasphemy by the Pharisees, the merchants' lawyers, and is crucified. The Roman priesthood later moves from Pergamos to Rome. From the beginning of America, the Bible was and is the foundation of American law. The Bible is the basis of all real law on the planet. Prior to the 8th century, the Anglo-Saxon Europeans practiced most of the principles of the Bible that were the precepts of the people's law, a system designed to protect and preserve the unalienable rights of the people and provide a balanced, limited form of government. As one of the founders of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson discovered Anglo-Saxon institutions were almost identical to the ancient institutions of Israel, the oldest system of representative government known to man. 1000. Goldsmiths as money changers, the merchants' banks, receive gold deposits and loan out more receipts than they have gold in reserve. Hence, fractional reserve banking is born. 1100. Henry I takes the money power away from the money changers and establishes the tally stick system, which lasts nearly 500 years. 1066. The Normans under William the Conqueror subjugate the English people and establish the royal dynasty that occupies the throne of England today. The Normans impose a system of rulership, law, that destroys their rights and confiscates much of their land, inflicting a system of cruel oppression that eventually becomes impossible to endure. 1215. Because King John was one of the most cruel and ruthless of the Norman kings, the barons unite and force him to sign the Magna Carta, or Large Charter, at Runnymede, England, June 15, 1215, under the threat of being beheaded. The Magna Carta returned to the people many of the rights that the conquerors had stolen from them, and acknowledged that the king himself is subject to the Magna Carta law. The Magna Carta refers not only to the rights of the barons, but makes frequent reference to the rights of English freemen. The American founders consider themselves to be freemen and invoke the Magna Carta, a covenant on the part of the king and his heirs, so that their rights will be respected as well. The Magna Carta is one of the foundations of American law. Parliament. Parliament is a formal conference for the discussion of public affairs, a council of state in early medieval England, an assemblage of the nobility, clergy, and commons called together by the British sovereign as the supreme legislative body in the United Kingdom. A similar assemblage in another kingdom or state, one of several principal courts of justice existing in France before Revolution in 1789. Parliament means a group of people who believe themselves to be superior by their own authority, making law in comfort and seclusion, without recourse or responsibility, to control the common people whom they consider to be of inferior quality and worthy of little regard. So-called aristocrats do not want to communicate at the common level because it would endanger their self-appointed superior status as the elite. The foundations of parliamentary government began to develop around 1265, and this gradually developed into a legislative voice to represent the desires of the people. It also provided a bargaining tool to regain some of the lost powers of the people and to limit the tyrannical powers of the king, and to persuade the people not to resist the powers of the king. The parliament retained the right to have no taxation without the approval of the people's representatives. They also established the principle that there would be no laws imposed on the people that had not been first fully approved by the parliament. Finally, the parliament secured the right to impeach abusive officers of the king whenever it was shown that they had violated the law in the exercise of their high office. A legislative forum is developed thereby. 1500. Henry VII strengthened laws against usury, which infuriates the money changers, the merchants' banks. Julius Caesar conquers England, paving the way in England for the Roman Catholic Church, which excommunicates the king for beheading his wives. The succeeding king drives the Roman Catholic Church out of England and institutes the Church of England. 1600. Queen Elizabeth I controls the money supply and issues her own coin against the wishes of the money changers, the merchants' banks. 1649. Oliver Cromwell is financed by the money changers, the merchants' banks, and has King Charles killed, and plunges England into debt from wars and takes over the city of London for his own use. Oliver Cromwell's district called London, just like Congress's district called Washington, D.C. 1688, the money changers, the merchants' bank, financed William of Orange of the Netherlands to overthrow the Stuart kings and take possession of the English throne for them. 1694, England is financially strapped after 50 years of war with Holland and France. The Private Bank of England is formed to establish laws to protect the bank and confirm the debt of England owed to the crown. The Bank of England replaces the tally stick system with its own money system and takes away the king's power to control money. 1698, English debt grows from £1,250,000,000 to £16 million, within 4 years an increase of 1,280%. 1748, Amschel Bauer in Germany opens a goldsmith shop under the Rote sign in the German tongue, or Rothschild. Amschel Rothschild has 5 sons. During the reign of 2 German kings over England, George I and George II from 1714 to 1760, the parliament was left relevantly on its own. The government was run almost entirely by the king's prime minister, which meant that he and the other members of parliament serving in the cabinet could have relatively free hand in running the government. This gave England a limited monarchy with a parliamentary system of government that allowed the legislature to exercise unlimited power. This parliament system never rose above this form, nor did its commonwealths, Canada, Australia, and the others that followed this exact same pattern. As a result, many Europeans began migrating to America to be socially and spiritually free. America, the soil comprising the contiguous 50 states now called the United States of America. As of 1776, America comprised 13 independent colonies. America, at first, an English colony where the people elected the delegates of local and provincial assemblies that first occurred in Virginia in 1619. Political events, 1773 to 1980. As the colonies gained political and economic strength, they eventually demanded their rights as Englishmen by issuing the Declaration of Independence from the King of England, which became a declaration of war. The colonists then confederated together as the United States of America, a confederated republic wherein the states were supreme. 1773. May. The British renew the Townshend Act that is about to expire and allows the British East India Tea Company to sell direct to the American public without American middlemen and any middleman market, thus angering the merchants of Boston and triggering the Boston Tea Party. On December 16th, 30 men disguised as Mohawk Indians dumped 342 chests of British tea into Boston Harbor. 1774. King George III and British Parliament retaliate by passing the Coercive Acts, called by the colonialists in America the Intolerable Acts. 1774, summer, the actual start of the Revolutionary War. Massachusetts colonists prevent the British courts from functioning in their state and develop self-rule. 1774. The First Continental Congress assembles in Philadelphia. 1775. April 18th. The British are repelled at Concord, Massachusetts, and are exiled to the Boston Peninsula. 1776. May 1st. The Order of the Illuminati. A secret society of wealthy intellectuals is founded by Dr. Adam Weishaupt, a professor of canon law at Ingolstadt University in Bavaria. After the headquarters of the Illuminati are raided by the Bavarian government, the Illuminati operate under the guise of the League of the Just. From the beginning, the Illuminati's purpose is to overthrow the Pope, all civil governments, and the King of Europe, or Kings of Europe. 1781, the First National Bank of the United States, the Bank of North America, is formed by the act of the Continental Congress that owns and controls it as a public institution in the public's name. 1787, the Constitution for the United States is devised. 1789, the Constitution for the United States is ratified by the colonial United States. 1791, the Assumption Act allows the newly chartered Bank of the United States, more commonly known today as First Bank of America, to assume private control of state-chartered banks. 1792, the Coinage Act, which has never been revoked, defines a dollar as a unit of weight of either silver or gold. Federal Reserve notes are not dollars, even though this is stated on their face. A Minnesota court case in 1969 said, "These Federal Reserve notes are not lawful money within the contemplation of the Constitution of the United States and are null and void. Further, the notes on their face are not redeemable in gold or silver coin, nor is there a fund set aside anywhere for the redemption of said notes." 1832. President Andrew Jackson vetoes renewal of the charter for the Second Bank of the United States. 2 subsequent assassination attempts on his life prove unsuccessful when the pistol aimed at him misfires both times. 1871. The federal government reforms itself into the District of Columbia, a corporation called Washington, D.C., and adopts itself under its new Constitution of, not for, the United States of America. In 1871. 1873, financial panic. 1874, financial panic. 1893, financial panic. 1907, financial panic. The financial panic in 1907, provoked by J.P. Morgan, brings about a total change of the monetary system and a private control of the central banks. 1910, the basic plan of the Federal Reserve Act is drafted in a secret meeting at the private resort of J.P. Morgan on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. The 7 men who attend represent an estimated 1/4 of the total wealth of the world. They are Nelson W. Aldrich, a Republican whip in the Senate, chairman of the National Monetary Commission, father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr., Henry P. Davidson, senior partner of J.P. Morgan Company, Charles D. Norton, president of the First National Bank of New York, Pia Andrew, assistant secretary of the United States Treasury, Frank A. Vanderlip, president of the National City Bank of New York, representing William Rockefeller, Benjamin Strong, head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust Company, later to become the head of the Federal Reserve System, Paul M. Warburg, a partner in Kuhn, Loeb & Company, representing the Rothschilds and the Warburgs in Europe. 1912, April 15th, 2:30 a.m., the 46,388-ton RMS Titanic with 2,223 souls aboard sinks after contact with an iceberg in the North Atlantic. Only 700 or so managed to survive. More than 1,500 people die. Many of the ultra-wealthy on board are opposed to the above plans to establish a central bank. 1913. April 8th, the 17th Amendment is ratified, passing power reserved to the states into the hands of a new form of federalism, placing the United States of the Union in the position of mere supervised franchises of government. This act sets the stage for the complete change of the federal government from a constitutionally guaranteed republic to a democracy, and it sets the stage for a hostile corporate takeover of the monetary system of the United States, placing it into private hands. 1913, December 27th and 23rd. The Federal Reserve Act creates the Federal Reserve System of district banks, a non-federal private for-profit corporation signed into law by Woodrow Wilson, regarding which years later he confesses, "I have unwittingly ruined my country." 1915. May 7th, the USS Lusitania, an ocean liner with American passengers on board, is sunk by a German U-boat commanded by Captain Walter Schneider in the English Channel off the coast of Ireland. Right before this happened, the Lusitania, reportedly carrying over 6 million rounds of ammunition owned by the J.P. Morgan Company, stopped its traditional zigzag sailing pattern and cut its speed in half to await an escort vessel, the HMS Juno, which was to lead it to port. Unbeknownst to the Lusitania, and for reasons which have never been satisfactorily explained, the First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill, ordered the Juno to return to port of Queenstown, while the Lusitania sits alone and unprotected in the English Channel waiting for its arrival. One torpedo is fired, and within 18 minutes, 1,198 passengers, including 128 Americans, perish. It is speculated that Churchill deliberately placed the Lusitania in danger in order to draw America into the war. 1917, April 16th. The United States officially declares war on the Axis powers. 1919, June 28th. The League of Nations is signed into existence without the participation of the United States. Until more than 20 years later, it is repackaged as the United Nations. 1920. Financial panic. Financial panic is engineered by the Fed, proving that it can manipulate the economies of the nations at will, without war. 1921. The Shepard-Towner Maternity Act, known as the Maternity Act, creates the registration of birth records, or what we now know as the birth certificate. This legislation authorizes federal aid to states for maternity, child, health, and welfare programs. However, the Supreme Court rules the act unconstitutional the following year, but the issuance of the birth certificate still remains. 1921, July 29th. The Council on Foreign Relations, or the CFR, is formed because the United States refuses to join the League of Nations following World War I. An outgrowth of a secret British society formed by Cecil Rhodes and backed by Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundation money, the CFR's agenda envisions nothing less than world domination and the establishment of a modern feudalistic society controlled by themselves through the world's central banks. 1930. The Bretton Woods Agreement, in which 16 nations declare bankruptcy. The Geneva Convention Treaty declares that international bankruptcy treaties are superior to all federal laws and the United States Constitution. 1933, March 9th. President Roosevelt declares the bankruptcy of the United States by Executive Orders 6073, 6102, 6111, and 6260 as codified at 12 USCA 95A. See Senate Report 93 through 549, pages 187 and 594. 1938. The federal United States joins the International Criminal Police Commission, or Interpol, designating the U.S. Attorney General as the official representative to the organization. The Secretary of Treasury, designated by the U.S. Attorney General, becomes the representative to Interpol in 1958, pursuant to Article 30 of the Constitution and General Regulations of Interpol. 22 U.S.C. 263A. All representatives must renounce their allegiance to their respective countries and expatriate. 1944. July. The Bretton Woods Monetary Conference at the Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, which through the guidance of Harry Dexter White, Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, later known as a member of a communist espionage ring, and John Maynard Keynes, a well-known Fabian socialist from England, creates the IMF, or World Bank, whose main role is the elimination of the gold exchange standard as the basic of currency valuation and the establishment of world socialism. White becomes the first executive director for the United States at the IMF or the World Bank. Over 100 additional nations declare bankruptcy at this time. The World Bank is the agent for the creditors' principles of the bankrupt federal United States. It is not subject to American law. 1946. The Administrative Procedures Act is instituted. 1973. The Trilateral Commission is created by David Rockefeller to coordinate North America, the United States, Mexico, and Canada, Japan, and Western Europe into the New World Order under slogans such as free trade and environmental protection, until a full-blown regional government emerges from this process. The so-called trade treaties with the European Union, i.e. the North American Free Trade Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, or GATT, have little to do with free trade. 1980. The UNIDO Treaty, Treaty Number 9719, is ratified by the Senate, which makes the United States Constitution subservient to the United Nations World Constitution. UNIDO is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization.